do you think that it's like whenever you're like say Tejanos for example,
Sure.
right? Like, do you think that like Tejano, like 7th generation, 8th generation Tejanos, like they're so far removed from the actual migration experience that it's a lot easier for them to not resonate with the like current day Mexican, crossing over, or the immigration experience in general? Like, do you think that their view of themselves is so American centric that it's really uncomfortable for them to see themselves as any other thing? I think that's part of it, but like I want to know your take on it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think part of it is this idea of the way we look and being othered is a thing, right?
Of course.
We're like, hey, I just want to blend in and, not get picked up or being, racially profiled or whatever, right?
Right.
So part of that is like, how can I just integrate and see myself as this ideal American, right? And so part of that is white.
For sure.
Our affinity towards whiteness.
Yeah.
And so, some of us, especially in the Latino version, we come in all shapes and sizes, right? And
there is that stereotype, like, as soon as you get your citizenship, you want to act white real quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it, this idea of like blending into this ideal American culture. And it's rooted like way back into like, I would say like, maybe first generation, because like even back then in the 70s and the 80s, and we still hear it, like even with like the No Sabo kids.
Yeah.
It's like, that was all about not teaching children Spanish was this affinity towards whiteness, right? And then we have all these other...
And it was also a survival tactic.
Exactly.
It was also a survival tactic. I get called a no sabo kid all the time, but like it was also a survival tactic because of the fact that in schools you had to learn English, because if you spoke Spanish, you would get...
That was a consequence.
Yeah, it was a consequence, right? They were trying to, again, the erasure of the history.
Yeah.
And so it was a survival tactic in the sense that, like, if we wanted to continue being here without any, repercussions, they had to acclimate.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, I mean, I'm just piggybacking off of what you're saying. You know what I mean?
It's not a simple solution. It's complex for sure. But I think this idea of like how we associate ourselves with our own culture and digging into, well, what we believe our culture is, and you could have like, folks that grew up along the border. And, when you think about like the Valley, they pulled up for Trump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they did.
And so when you think about like, when you go down to the Valley, everybody speaks Spanish. You know what I mean? But this idea that like, well, I'm American and whatever.
Yeah. Or they might be looking at it from an economic standpoint also, because if they're so close to the border and they might see the immigrant experience as like taking money away from them because of work, because of labor, like, something they might see it from a very specific kind of lens, and they're being preservationist as opposed to like what we might consider in a big city to be more like racist adjacent, or other adjacent. It might just be like a preservationist nature of trying to like not have to completely change their lifestyle or lose things that they want, which I can empathize with. You know what I mean?
Sure.
However, like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You vote for even if that's the only trait. This is like, all right, like even if that's the only thing that you want to happen, you also then voted to not have due process
to hurt your neighbors,
right,
to hurt your family members.
Yeah, you also,
right? So it's like,
right. So
how does that like? How does that make sense?
That's a tough conversation.
So I would say that there's definitely selfishness within that, because are you looking out for your family, for your extended family? Are you looking out for people that live just right outside your home? The people that make food for you, the people that pick the food for you. So for me, it's about understanding this whole complexity of
of the totality of it.
Exactly. And so that's an interesting.
But that's why I think John Leguizamo is doing such a great job, because coupled with what you're saying about like the lack of history is also the lack of pride. You are much more comfortable trying to be white, quote unquote, if you're not proud of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nobody that has pride in where they come from and who they are and their heritage is ever going to try to be something that they're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
It's only the person that doesn't know it, or that maybe knows it is ashamed of it for some reason. There's like some internal self-shame in there. Those are the people that are like, no. I've got to like that instinct of survival tactic comes in. Whereas like, I've grown to look at again a lot of John Leguizamo stuff, and I'm like, bro, like what? Like I should be proud of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I know.
whenever I see a white boy telling me like blah 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 blah, go back to this and that, I'm like, oh, actually, like, and I feel like the pride and the like, it's almost like an honor. Like, oh, you don't know? Oh, let me put you on game. Let me put you on game real quick because apparently you don't know history. Yeah, apparently you don't know how much. Like my people have done some shit, right? And to me, that's like a point of pride. I have felt more and more proud of who I am, and less willing to acclimate to anything that doesn't necessarily that I don't necessarily come from. Whereas I think maybe as a kid, again, this is kind of like a weird, at least for me, in my experience, it's not as bad as other people. I have friends that like lived up north, like in the country, and they really felt this. But I didn't. Again, I grew up in like a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, Houston, and I grew up in a black neighborhood. So like there was a deep like understanding that we kind of knew who we were, and that we like didn't really apologize for anything. But I could feel it every now and then, especially when I went outside and there was like a different, or other people interacted with me, teachers. You know, when I went to college, that was a big one. When I started traveling outside of like, you know, Houston in general, then I started to feel it, and I was like, oh, this is the feeling that people get, that they run away from.
That uncomfortableness, right?
That there's a huge discomfort there, and. For me, it has slowly evolved from like I can see why that was uncomfortable for people, especially like a kid. Yeah. But now I just feel like it's my responsibility to be like, oh, I've got to like piggyback on your work, on John Leguizamo's work. I've got to try to provide some context, because we really should be proud of who we are and where we come from and what we've provided to everyone.
Yeah, and so what you're talking about is this idea, a term called code switching, right?
Of course.
When we're together, because we're raza, we can be down and we can talk and be real, like whether it's at home and whatever, you know, our accents come out y todo. And then when we're like in this professional environment, we feel we have to act more white.
Sure.
And so that's called code switch.
Sure.
You know, and for me, like there's certain places for that, but I would say like, no, what you see is what you get. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
there's definitely a there's like a point of admiration that I have whenever people are like that. I tend to go back and forth. Yeah. Like if I'm in a corporate setting, like I need to get my message across. Sure. I need you to know that like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Yeah. And then eventually like I'll slowly lead you into the fact that like no, I come from this, I come from that. You know what I mean? But the same thing, like I grew up around a lot of black people. Yeah. So like the Ebonics and like the hip hop language, like it especially in Houston with our slang, like it can get very evident real quick if I'm talking to like a Houstonian that really, H-town. You know. And for me, I just again, this goes back to the pride, where most people might look at that and be like, "Oh, you're being fake." Yeah. I'm like, no. I'm being real. Yeah. But I am highlighting the range of my personality. Right. I'm highlighting the range of who I am as a person. Yeah. And in the same way that like when you're with if you're with your friend that like is from work, you might not talk about you know certain things, your childhood. Yeah. But if you hang out with somebody that you grew up with, you might be like, bro, remember when we used to I know. Right? So like people have range. Yeah. And you know, when code switching comes into the conversation, in my mind, I'm like, no. You just have a range, and you're a complex human being, and go for it. Fuck it up. Yeah, you know what I mean?
No, it's funny when you think about like linguistics and the way we speak in where we grew up with, because place is super important, right? Of part of our culture.
Of course.
And a lot of that is infused with different cultura, right? And so like border, like for example, along the border, you see this a lot. I've seen it in Laredo. I've seen it in the Valley. And in El Paso, in El Paso we say like we speak in song because we go. It kind of goes like that. Yeah. We have a cadence, right? Or we'll be like
I say that about Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, we'll say like something when we're telling a joke and we'll be like, he doesn't, se cree muy those things. Say that too. Yeah, so like those things like really come out when we're like with our gente, but it's all infused with the different cultura that's around us. And in H-Town, it's like
very different.
When you think about like
shout out to H-Town.
Shout out to H-Town. A-Leaf, the wards. And,
I'm from Second Ward, yeah.
Okay. And, the East End. And so it's all part of the cultura, right? Yeah. And then just like going back to the food, when you think about the blending of the food, when you think about like discada, right? It's the disc. But that idea actually came from Chinese railroad workers, right? So they had the train wheels that they used, hammer them into woks, right?
Yeah.
And then the farmers and the farm workers were, the Mexicanos. They use the tractor tills, ¿verdad? So it's very similar, right?
Right.
It's very similar. So we kind of like, beg, borrow, and steal from each other as part of that. But we always say like the tacos taste better when you know the story, right?
The taco always tastes better when you know the story. My friend, Mando, I think that's like the perfect place to end. Look, you know what? Go get some tacos. Go research the story because the taco tastes better when you know the story. I like that.
That's right. And follow Tacos of Texas podcast.
Tell everybody where to go.
Yeah.
Right here. That's your camera right here.
Oh, here we go. Tacos of Texas podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast. On Instagram, we're United Tacos of America.
And then you know where to find us, the Degenerates. Quick reminder, we are completely self-funded, so please like, share, subscribe. It goes a long way. You're helping get out a message that we feel is very, very, very important, and then it'll help me and all of us over here at our team to create a more well-rounded experience with hopefully better interviews in different places with great guests. So please like, share, subscribe. It's going to make a huge difference, and we hope that you like and enjoy. See you around. Till next time. Deuce.